And good morning, everyone. I'll present to you this work, which is basically a part of an opinion paper, which is on what can possibly go wrong when you're using AI in different applications in business and in everyday life, and how exactly we can deal with these. And this this work basically started, sorry, I'll just move to the slides, that we've been talking quite a lot about the bright side of AI, or basically what is the value of it, what kind of benefits it can provide to organizations, to society. But what we've seen is that many times things can potentially go wrong. So we do have an inherent dark side where there's some negative or some unintended consequences when using AI in different ways. And this can be because people have failed to think about certain aspects related to AI, neglected some elements around the design, around the use of data, or how they are actually used by different people. So over the last few years, we've seen quite a rise in interest on what artificial intelligence can do and what are the potential benefits of it. There's been a lot of talk, even from articles that are usually around economics and politics, like The Economist or Time magazine, around what AI can do for us, how it will change the way we're working, how we're living, how it will revolutionize our everyday life. And typically, these kind of articles and what the press that has been received so far is mostly positive oriented in the way that we're seeing what is the value of this new technology, which we're now starting to experiment with and use in business. Over the last few years, also, there's been quite a lot of discussion, especially around in magazines around technology management and management science, like the Harvard Business Review, about how we can build AI-powered organizations. So the key question here is, what exactly should organizations be doing in order to be able to adopt and use AI in their operations, and how should they change? So AI is introducing a number of different changes to these companies. So it's important to understand exactly what these are and how exactly we should deal with them. Nevertheless, what we are seeing is that when it comes to actual implementation of AI systems, there's many things that can possibly go wrong. And an interesting example of this has been the chatbot Tay. It was one of the first, probably, public attempts to release an AI system into the public and to have it learn from interactions. And back in 2016, Microsoft released on what was then Twitter. And this conversational agent basically learned from the interactions it had with the users on Twitter. And within a few hours, less than a day, actually, the bot actually learned different language from people, different ways of interaction, and these were not positive. People were playing it with it, they were trying to provoke it, and in the end, Microsoft had to shut this bot down within less than a day because of the types of things that learned. So one thing that we can see here is that these systems are very powerful and they can easily get completely out of control, and it's very difficult then to roll it back. So this is one of the inherent dangers of using AI. Other dangers are one that's been discussed quite a bit. So, for example, when we're using AI that has been built on some kind of biased data set or has some kind of bias in the model, and this bias is basically reinforced through the AI systems. And another example of this is Amazon, which had to remove one of its AI tools for hiring since it was deemed to be sexist, and it was not equally assessing candidates on their qualifications, but had some gender-related bias. Other issues when it comes to AI concern the actual use of them. So a few years ago, there was the release of the DeepMind's machine that was playing Go. And what this did is that they created a tournament with one of the top players at the time, Lee Sedol. He was actually the #1 player worldwide. And after a series of matches, what happened is that Lee Sedol understood that this AI agent was better than him. It was learning to play different types of moves. It had exceeded him. And this is a person that had devoted his entire life to learning and playing this game. So it was actually part of his identity. So it posed some questions about who we are, what we are doing, what we are capable of all and what are we actually if machines take over our role. Another interesting negative implication is this idea of de-skilling. And de-skilling is basically a term used when we have machines that take over skilled labor of people, and they are basically operated by people with less skills. So these higher skills are no longer needed in the market because they've been taken over by AI systems. What we did some years ago is that we had an open call in this journal, the European Journal of Information Systems, to have papers that are actually looking into cases where we have dark or negative sides of AI applications. And we had an open call for about a year where we were looking for papers, and we finally closed the special issue about 1 year ago, and we wrote the editorial about it, where we discussed what are some of the potential dangers when it comes to AI, and what are ways that we can potentially mitigate this or reduce them as much as possible. So the article on the right side, thinking responsibly about responsible AI and the dark side of AI, talks about this and ways that we can do this. So one thing that we build quite extensively is this notion of responsible AI. And what basically this comes from is a long history of ethics of AI. And ethics of AI is something that has been discussed from before even there was AI, from the time of science fiction. So the main discussion of this domain has been how exactly do we build machines? How do we build technologies that align ethically to what we believe and what we represent as humans? And how do we make them? Do we make sure that they don't harm people or they don't do any negative or unintended consequences? Out of this, we've had recently this term emerge, which is called responsible AI. And basically, responsible AI has been defined as a framework that documents how a specific organization is addressing the challenges around artificial intelligence from both an ethical and legal point of view. So it has become a much more central notion now that we are seeing actual use cases of AI in practice. And companies are starting to pilot different ways of being responsible when they're using these technologies. In fact, what we see in the last few years, and this is a very interesting report by the Berkman Klein Center for Internet Society at Harvard University, is that there's been many different documents that are being published over the last few years regarding responsible AI or trustworthy AI or principled AI, as they call it. You can see the timeline from 2016 up to almost today. And we have different types of organizations and different types of institutions publishing their reports from civil society, from government, from the private sector. And in the last few years, we've seen an explosion of these types of documents that try to define what responsible AI is and how exactly we should be implementing it. So this means that there is a lot of interest in this topic. One of these documents has been also the high-level expert group on AI from the European Commission. the European Commission is the governing body, which also concerns research and education in the European Union. And some years ago, they composed a panel of experts. And what they did is they tried to develop a report which highlights what are the key areas we should be looking into when it comes to thinking responsibly about AI. And they came up with a framework which has 7 different dimensions, and they define within each of these the types of actions or the principles that need to be upheld. Going into a little bit more detail on this document, they talk about different pillars of responsible AI. One of these being transparency. Transparency is basically the principle of how we can explain what's happening within an AI system to the various users. And within this, they define sub-dimensions. I guess you can see here, they talk about the need for traceability, the need for explainability, and the need for communication. And this is just one pillar out of the 7 different ones that they define in the framework. And what they've done here is they don't really explain in detail what companies should do and how they should actually implement their AI systems and manage them. But they're talking about what are the main principles that need to govern them. Interestingly, this isn't something that only concerns public bodies or inter-organizational bodies. It's something also that private companies are doing. If you look at Google, every year they release the AI Principle Progress Update, which is basically similarly a list of high-level principles that AI systems should adhere to and that companies should try to implement. And these align quite well with what are published in other reports. So there is kind of like an agreement now on what are the main key features of responsible AI. So when it comes to responsible AI and the domain of information systems, and this is basically the study of AI in use, what we have so far is that we have a set of high-level principles. They are talking about how AI should be governed, but not exactly what should be done. They also correspond to different actors and levels. So there's aspects that concern the developers, aspects concern the data scientists, the managers, the end users, the regulators, and so on. So there is a lot of distribution of responsibility around responsible AI when it comes to practice. And another thing is that they are also not associated with specific outcomes yet, which means that companies are told that they should be responsible when it comes to use of AI, but not why. Is there any value in that? So one of the things that is missing currently is that we have some high-level principles, and what we need to do is we need to understand how exactly organizations should be implementing them. And here comes this notion of IT governance, and IT governance is a concept that has been studied for many, many years, many decades even, and it's basically defined as a process that ensures the effective and efficient use of IT in enabling an organization to achieve its goals. So simply, this is basically what companies are doing with their IT systems in order for them to be functioning as intended. When it comes to research, IT governance has been defined as comprising of 3 main pillars. So companies should have structures, they should have processes, and they should define roles when it comes to IT management. And basically, these are the key elements that define what governance is. So you can think about structures, about the different roles and responsibilities around who does what. Processes are basically how we do certain operations when it comes to our IT management. And relational mechanisms is how exactly we participate and we basically collaborate with people within and throughout different organizations. So what we have from the IS domain, the information systems domain, is that we have well-defined framework for actually how we govern technology. And what we're currently missing in the field of responsible AI is how exactly these correspond to AI systems. So there's a few key questions here. And I want to end this presentation with a few more open questions and a bit of food for thought, maybe. The key is, how should AI be managed responsibly? So on the one hand, we have the principles, but what we're lacking currently is that we don't know and we haven't studied yet how these principles are implemented in practice and in different organizations. There's also many different ways of thinking about how to govern things, different modes of governance. So how exactly do we incorporate and consolidate these different perspectives? And another last key thing is if companies should be responsible around their AI use to avoid negative or unintended consequences. That's an obvious thing. Should there also be, is there some gain for them in acting in a responsible way when they're using the technology? And here, this is an interesting question because there has been a lot of discussion over the last years about how companies should act ethically, responsibly. So the question is, how should they do that with the technology they are using, especially with AI, which is a very powerful tool. So with that, I would like to end the presentation and thank you very much for your attention. And I look forward to any questions you might have.